In 1991, one of the most powerful empires in history simply vanished. There was no final, epic battle. No foreign invasion. No enemy soldiers marching through Red Square in a victory parade. The Soviet Union, a superpower that had shaped the world for nearly 70 years, collapsed from the inside out. This is the story of how that seemingly indestructible giant fell, and in doing so redrew the map of the world forever. For decades, the Soviet Union projected an image of immense strength. It held Eastern Europe in an iron grip and engaged in a tense global rivalry with the United States. But beneath the surface, by the 1980s, the entire system was rotting. The centrally planned economy, once hailed as the future, was an absolute disaster. People were forced to wait in endless lines, sometimes for hours, just to get basic necessities, like bread or milk. While the West was leaping into the computer age, Soviet technology was stuck in the past, lagging far behind. The relentless arms race, a contest of building more and more missiles and tanks, had bled the country dry, diverting resources from everything else. The empire was under immense pressure, and something had to give. In 1985, a new, younger leader came to power, Mikhail Gorbachev. He saw the cracks forming and knew that without drastic changes, the entire structure would shatter. He introduced two bold and risky reforms. First, glasnost, which means openness. For the first time, citizens were allowed to openly criticize the government and discuss the country's problems. The second was perestroika, or restructuring, an attempt to reform the failing economy. Gorbachev's goal was not to destroy communism, but to save it, to make it more efficient and humane. Instead, by opening the floodgates of criticism and exposing the deep-seated flaws of the system, he accidentally accelerated its demise. He had hoped to fix the machine, but instead he revealed that it was broken beyond repair. The first signs of the empire cracking appeared not in Moscow, but on its edges. Emboldened by glasnost, the nations of Eastern Europe, long under Soviet domination, began to demand their freedom. In Poland, Hungary, and Czechoslovakia, massive protests erupted. Then came the moment that symbolized the end of an era. The fall of the Berlin Wall in 1989. A physical and ideological barrier that had divided a continent for a generation was torn down by ordinary people. One by one, the communist governments of Eastern Europe collapsed. This wave of change didn't stop at the border. Inside the Soviet Union itself, the 15 republics that made up the country from Ukraine to Kazakhstan, from Latvia to Georgia began to push for their own independence. Gorbachev was rapidly losing control. The center could no longer hold. The final act came in August of 1991. Fearing the complete disintegration of the country, a group of hardline communist officials attempted a desperate coup. They placed Gorbachev under house arrest and sent tanks rolling into the streets of Moscow, trying to turn back the clock and restore the old order. The world held its breath, watching to see if tyranny would once again crush the hope of freedom. But the people of Moscow, led by the charismatic Boris Yeltsin, stood defiant. They surrounded the parliament building, stood in front of the tanks, and refused to be intimidated. After just 3 chaotic days, the coup failed spectacularly. But in its failure, it destroyed the last shred of authority the Central Soviet government had. Power had slipped from Gorbachev's hands and into the hands of the republics. With a central government now powerless, the end came swiftly. On December 26, 1991, the Soviet Union was officially dissolved. The red hammer and sickle flag was lowered from the Kremlin for the last time. In its place, 15 new independent nations were born almost overnight. The Cold War, the global standoff that had threatened nuclear annihilation for half a century, was over. A superpower that had once terrified the world had simply vanished from the map. The Soviet Union didn't fall because of a foreign war or a military defeat. It fell because its own internal contradictions, its economic failures, and the unstoppable desire of its people for freedom made it impossible to hold together any longer. The story of its collapse is a powerful lesson in how even the mightiest empires can crumble. If you want to understand the forces that build and break the world's greatest powers, make sure to subscribe to WW2 Chronicles. Thanks for watching.